Yeah. So regenerative ecologies, ecosystems, structures, et cetera, is something I'm like newly sort of engaging with and trying to understand more deeply. But your question about systems change and like what role does Web3 or blockchain or any other sort of tool for economic cooperation play in this? That's like really the big question, right? So for me and my work outside of my 9 to 5 day job has really been focusing on trying to understand sort of the political elements of Web3 as it's emerging in order to help triangulate one approach to asking what is the potential meaning of a lot of the work we're doing, and where is the opportunity for like actual power shifts between ecosystems. So if we're trying to think of digital ecosystems in a way that is sustainable or is values aligned or is sort of more than the sum of its technological components, how do we proactively build that, not just with the kinds of things we want to see and like laying on top of it language that is appealing to us and our immediate communities, but in a way that actually shifts power balances away from institutions and individuals that aren't actually aligned with like the deeper meaning of what we're trying to achieve. And I think it's one thing to say, you know, here's a model I'm experimenting with and it's like cool and we've got like early buy-in and it's like, you know, it's really rad, like we're I don't know, planting trees or, you know, educating local populations, doing direct aid. That's still really valuable. The question that I'm interested in is then how do we transform that over time into something that is infrastructural and also deeply meaningful longer term. So it's like truly getting at the heart of that sustainability question.
Yeah, it's like the famous Buckminster Fuller quote of, if you want to build a new paradigm, you got to make the old one obsolete, right? So I think that's kind of where we're at, is like, instead of like, how do we hack the old one and try to like make do with what we have? It's more like, well, actually, how do we go back to first principles? Say, what's the point of us coming together? Is to better meet our needs. And if you get really down to the basic point of why did humans come together to better meet our needs, and then you look at today's systems, you see actually they're working against our needs in almost every category. More mental illness, less physical health, more, I mean, there's across the board, when you look at the indicators of like social well-being and happiness, they're kind of going down. It's so obnoxious because they're like, actually, no, things are getting better because this community, they used to live off $0 a day and now they have $100 a day. But what they don't tell you is they didn't need money before. All of their needs were met in complex social webs and arrangements and different economic systems. Like all of their needs were not met, or all of their needs were met and $0 a day was perfectly fine. So the actual improvement from $0 to $100 was a massive problem for them, because it basically meant a lot of their needs were taken away. They're forced into land that they had to pay rent for, et cetera. And now they're in poverty. So that they kind of twisted those indicators of social progress when they mean the exact opposite thing, you know, in practice. Anyway, I say all of that because I'm being ridiculous. And my point is that I think that's the major question, is thinking, how can this technology help us redesign how we come together? How do we make decisions? Like, why are we here? And how can we best meet our needs of ourselves and our planet? You know, and actually talk about our needs, like the conversation of, I have emotional needs, I have spiritual needs, I have, you know, needs that our current culture is just like, whoa, you know, do that in your free time. Like, you know, we're here to help you meet the basic 3 and then you're on your own for the rest. But I think that's like stunting our evolution, you know? So anyway.
Yeah, no, this reminds me, I hadn't thought of this in such a long time, but years ago when I was a freshman in college, I took an anthropology course, and one of the biggest case studies we worked on had to do with a village in Central America. There was an AmeriCorps program that went down and they built a well. And it was great because this was going to be the first time that the people in this village didn't have to walk like 1.5 miles or something to a river in order to get water. It would be right there in like the middle of town. But what they didn't account for after they had like built this well and like deemed it a universal success because they had brought resources to people, was that the role that this river actually played within this small community was that it was a community meeting space, particularly for women. And now all of a sudden that they had a well in the middle of town, because of like local culture, it wasn't deemed appropriate for like women to be kind of like loitering outside in front of everybody else. And what they actually ended up doing was, yes, bringing a resource closer, but also taking one away, and that this sort of ability to sort of self-select community space had been taken away and was deemed no longer necessary for them. And yeah, they ended up doing like a long-term anthropological study of sort of the women in this village and how they relate to their broader society. And a lot of them felt very alienated after this well had been introduced. So it's this idea that like sometimes we get very pigeonholed with this like two-dimensional thinking about resource needs and opportunities. But the reality is that there's like a human nuance to it that we often miss. And this is something in the blockchain space that I think people have been very attuned to, but usually in sort of microcosms of the broader zeitgeist. Sorry for using jargon, but
no, I love this. We're going straight deep again, which is the first thing we did, which is why we're having this conversation. The other thing I see this technology affording is creating resources where they weren't really there before. So you talked about, resources being taken away because they're not being made explicit or protected for that matter. Now we get actually the opposite of that is communities being able to come together and make do with other resources. So why this is important, and I'll explain what all this means. Today, basically bankers get to decide how humanity evolves because they're the only ones that fund things. What's the first step everyone thinks they need to do? Like, oh, I come up with a business plan and then I go raise money. What does that really say? I come up with a business plan and then I go get permission from this group of people, whether or not this plan is going to happen or not. But in reality, we don't need money. We need land, we need asset, we need resources, we need people to do things. Like there's so much we need all the other forms of capital. Money is just the medium that helps us get there, right?
Yeah. Right.
So we gave all of that power to like one group of people. But what we can do with DAOs is we can come together and say, actually, we're going to create a DAO. We have these 50 roles that we need. And just make it explicit. We need you to come and contribute, and then you're going to earn a share of this organization. Right now, we're working with land projects where there are landowners that couldn't sell their land, didn't want to sell it because they didn't want to sell it to some company and then it was going to be destroyed. They really wanted it, like the land, to be taken care of or preserved or whatever it was. They have all these deep, beautiful reasons. And they wanted it to be connected to a village and this community of people who want to come and build on it. But they had no way of making that agreement. So then there's this weird power imbalance where the landowner owns all the land and the people on the land don't feel comfortable and there's not a fair share of the value that's flowing and blah, blah, blah. But now they can actually all come together and form a DAO and say, good, your land's worth 16 million, then you get 16 million DAO tokens. And then everyone who's working on the land, they're earning DAO tokens every day they're working there. So they're earning their share too. Everyone's being equally recognized. The person with the tractor is like, hey, I have a tractor, I'm going to contribute that. And they get to put up all the other assets they need to make their village happen. We need builders, we need resources, like contribute everything you have. And then we actually give light to all of the other resources that communities have that are being obfuscated and ignored because our current economic systems put way too much value on money, right? So that's the other thing that tokens are unlocking. I think they kind of got stuck trying to look like money and other securities, but they can go directly to looking like all the other forms of capital that we need to help people coordinate, to do anything, like do a land project, do a business, whatever you're doing, this could help.
Yeah, I think the big question for me too is then within this system, I mean, there's an idea too that's I've heard circulated within the Web3 space, but not in the context of regenerative systems, about dead capital, right? Which is very much like rooted in neoliberal economic and political thinking around the idea that, there's the reason there's mass underdevelopment in the world doesn't even have to do with money, but it has to do with the fact that people do not have a way to formalize their economic relationships. So they have all of these resources and they have all of these assets, and there's no way for them to collateralize them. There's no way for them to get contracts or like proofs of ownership for family homes that they've had for generations. There's all of these reasons, and the blockchain is a way to systematically provide structure, even if there isn't any like jurisprudence being done within an area in order to provide that for people. And you can take out sort of like the nation state context to extend that just to like more organic communities that are being formed. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in this sort of, again, this frame of like long-term thinking about these sustainability models is how do we balance the ability to tokenize resources and call attention to sort of under-recognized assets and the labor that people are doing or providing without it being called out explicitly in past systems, with potentially corrosive effects of having to attribute value to everything people do within an ecosystem. So what kinds of byproducts do you instantiate or incentivize when you say, we have, 15,000 tokens, which represent a share of something that we are all collectively trying to own and manage. How do I feel or build a sense of community and a true sense of ownership over the space, camaraderie with the people I'm sharing it with, etc., if I'm also thinking about ways to maximize my potential share? It's one of those things where different people have very different motivations. And so thinking of scaling, how do you actually instill ultimately this sense of like connection to this thing for the purpose of managing it, rather than trying to extract from it something that is now quantified?
Yeah, I'd say blockchain is a lot like nuclear. Where nuclear could be an atomic bomb and incredibly destructive, or it could be an infinite fuel source as long as you can figure out what to do with the radiation. Blockchain is kind of the same thing, where it could be used for infinite destruction and kind of destroying the human spirit and turning everything into money, where we're always like competing against each other on a micro level, where artists' self-worth is how much their NFT sold for and all this crap, right? We can do that and make hyper-capitalism. That's going to happen, fine. We could also take this technology and have our tokenomics and our governance systems look radically different, but using the same technology, right? Because you can use the same technology stack to have an oligarchy or a democracy of one person, one vote. It's just a design choice. It's a small settings contract change, and you can have a difference in what type of governance system you have. Most of crypto is going to pure plutocracy, governance by the wealthy. And then ironically, the whole reason Bitcoin started and I joined it was like, hey, the banking system's corrupt. A minority of people get disproportionate value from society. It's a problem. Okay, and then they went on and built exactly the same thing and then built a direct bridge for everyone that can print infinity money in the old system to come in and buy up the new one. And that's exactly what happened in 2018 in that bull run, is Wall Street and institutions and all the wealthy people from the old system came in and bought up all of crypto. So now it's like, okay, guys, we just gave a new speculative asset class. Good job. We empowered them, and now it's the same story, which is kind of revolution. And why it's called the revolution, it's just a revolving, it's the same thing. And now it's a new power elite instead of, it's not always bankers. Now a lot of tech bros got really rich too. That's a huge, terrible one-way perspective. Simultaneously, Bitcoin was fantastic. A lot of people benefited from it, myself included. I think it paved the way. It's the godfather. It's incredible. But as all life and generations do, you kind of die. And that's how evolution happens. You live, you learn, you pass better DNA on to the next offspring, and you die.
Sure.
Bitcoin, I think, needs to pass its DNA off to the next offspring and, go about its way. That was a lot, and I'm pretty opinionated, and I just had a coffee today for the first time in forever, and I'm talking. So anyway, passing it back to you.
No, I don't know if I have any direct thoughts. I think that's interesting. And I think not in this space, but in another one, I'd be very curious to hear sort of more of your thoughts about Bitcoin specifically. That's one aspect or use of crypto that I'm not super on board with. So I'd be very curious to hear how you were involved in the community and how you see it progressing. But I think within this realm, so one thing that I've been really thinking about is there are two different models we see kind of emerging within Web3. And one is sort of thinking about them as both expansive and extractive crypto models. And the primary designation or point of departure between these two things for me is governance. And one thing I'm really working on currently is really trying to articulate governance as sort of a social theory for blockchains. Because what you see are a lot of protocols now, especially in DeFi, where it's almost unanimously the case, where you have governance for the sake of achieving economic means. But what you are ultimately seeking to create is a system where you are creating multiple points of extraction from within a single system. So you are bringing people in as owners, contributors, participators, whatever you want to call them, but all of a sudden they're asked to contribute both labor and liquidity to whatever it is they're trying to produce. And yes, they may have governance rights over something, but usually this governance is designed in such a way that it tries to minimize friction between transactions. So it's a way of bringing people into what is supposed to be a human network and trying to minimize and abstract away those human qualities for the sake of building value, extracting meaning, things like this, right? So I actually went to a session at ETH Denver where somebody was talking about community as a collection of nobodies, and the value of collective ownership is being able to strip us of, you know, our race and our gender and all of these different like human signifiers, right? So that we can just come in, we can transact, and we can get out. And to me, this is very much a vision of what I do not want to be a part of, right? Whereas on the other side, yeah.
No, keep going. This is gold.
Yeah, whereas on the other side of the equation, you have systems that are emerging, which sort of put at their center this sort of struggle around decision making and values creation. And to me, that is the thing that is like most interesting. Because if we think about crypto networks as facilitating economic cooperation, and we think about their ability to allow us to scale projects and communities across like a very wide array of both like geographic space, but also just size and numbers, it is increasingly difficult to do that with people who are very bought in, who are perhaps emotionally invested in what's being created or constructed, and are participating in making joint or collective decisions within a democratic framework for the entire collective. But for me, again, when we talked earlier, like, you know, you have these tokens for this cooperative land share, like how do you make it so that people are here for like the community and the actual values, and they're not like consciously or not trying to just maximize their token share and representation in this ecosystem. It really has to do with how you're constructing the very like nature of that participation. And if you are in an organization that is optimizing governance processes around friction and around tension for the purpose of achieving genuine democratic consensus in order to progress, to me, that is like very much a social model that is like very interesting. It's why I was first became interested in blockchain in like the 2013, 2014. And it's something that I like don't see in mainstream Web3 or mainstream crypto, but obviously that's the case, right? Because that's not something that is profitable. It's very misaligned with like very prominent tech culture. And it's not something that when you are still very nascent, that is profitable to get involved in. It's very time intensive.
I mean, that's what's so fascinating about, I love, okay, so one, love all of that. And I have like a million ways I want to respond. So I'm going to try to gather that.
I'm trying to write these things up, but you're one of the first people I've actually like shared this with, because the idea has been kind of circulating for a while. So any ideas or responses you have are very welcome.
Yeah, I have like 30 responses. So one is, I think a lot of crypto has been coming at it from the tech capitalistic libertarian perspective.
Sure.
And I think what it's meeting right now, or at least what I'm trying to dance in, is bringing like that humanitarian earth regeneration perspective. So you can look at it as like the masculine and feminine. You know, crypto is very masculine and moves forward. It's got a lot of energy, but the feminine energy, like, how do we make this real and meaningful for people? Like, why can we make this actually matter and be better for people and planet? That's been missing. And that's the element I see coming alive right now. And it's, I started mining Bitcoin in 2011 and playing with it then, because, you know, forget about the US dollar, it sucks. But when I first got in, and great people, and I was a libertarian at the time, a little anarchist, you know, it was really great. But my main focus at the time was permaculture, intentional communities, like people setting up alternative villages and living close to the land. Like, that's what drives me. So I spent the first like 8 years kind of dancing in crypto, but mostly being in the permaculture village space, and then weaving it all together. Once DAOs came alive, it's like, wait, this is really powerful technology. Because, you know, Bitcoin, this is what I think every protocol needs to ask, is like, who's benefiting and what's being coordinated. Yeah. You know, Bitcoin was the first. Who does it benefit? It benefits holders. Like, what is it coordinating? A use of a lot of energy, which is also who benefits. Energy companies benefit 10 billion a year. You know, mining rare earth metals, setting up factories, it's a benefit for the other 3 billion.
Sure.
Cool. So it's a coordination technology that was able to get millions of people to burn a lot of electricity. Like, that's fantastic, because we were able to coordinate a lot of people to do something, but we could have done anything. So I think that's the cool part of DAOs, is that we can create these new coordination structures. Then instead of 10 billion going to electricity fees, that 10 billion could have gone to subsidized local food systems to back up food-based currency. That would make a lot of sense. So now when the random plumber comes in, is like, what am I going to do with this internet coin? It's like, well, you can actually buy healthy local food with it tonight. They'll be like, oh yeah, eat healthy local food all the time. Good, awesome. we could subsidize local food, localizing our food systems, et cetera. We could do anything with this DAO coordination technology. What we need to do is have the tools that empower us to be able to do that. So this is where we've been spending like the last 6-7 years now, is building DAO tooling and figuring out how to build new economic systems and new social currencies and new community currencies, and how to do the different pools between them, and how do you weight them and create indexes for regeneration. All this stuff is we've just been designing, like, if we could start from scratch to come together to create a new type of civilization, like what would it look like? What types of economic and governance systems might it need, And then just building on that question, we've just been, gone this little journey. So that's what I really wanted to connect with you on, is to like kind of weave in your lens and how you're approaching this, and kind of see if we can pull that magic in to what's being created. Am I supposed to be on a call, another call right now? I might be.
It's not quite the hour. I do have a hard stop, unfortunately, at noon, but I think we have a few minutes.
Here, let me just. Hey, Andrew, let's connect in 8 minutes, and I'll just remove you.
Word. I'm still trying to get my time zone situated because I'm in Mexico, and apparently the world shifts.
Yeah, no problem.
Time, so
So
just gotta figure out my
actually,
scheduling
an
stuff.
hour and 7 minutes, actually. But hey, hop on in 7 and we're good.
Okay,
All right. See you, brother.
cool. Same link.
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But for the last 7 minutes, I'd love to hear your kind of reflections or anything else you have.
Well, actually, if it's okay, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about like the work you're doing with SEEDS. I was like looking at this framework. I actually still have to read the Constitution, which I want to look at, but I'd be curious to hear how you're pursuing this work, what it kind of looks like now. I want to download the app actually and buy some tokens and see what that looks like, and kind of go through that onboarding process still. But before I did that, I wanted to kind of hear from you, like, what is the pitch for this network, and how are you guys? I know you're working on all kinds of design concepts within regenerative systems, but what does that work look like currently for you?
Okay, so answering this question has been a multi-year journey to figure out how to do it. But I only can get it down to an hour. So unfortunately, I'll send you a video that please watch it. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Literally just recorded it, and you'll be one of the first to watch it because it's unlisted right now. I'm getting feedback. But it is summarizing the last kind of decade journey, because that's important, because I've been on this journey for a decade, building complex ecosystems to help build a new type of civilization. Thousands of people actually at this point have contributed in the journey so far, and there's a lot of story to tell. So in order to do any form of justice, so you actually understand what's going on, it requires the whole story. But I can give you a sliver today. So Regen Civics is at the cutting edge of what we're doing, and it's an alliance of like 40 different organizations that are all in some capacity helping villages and regenerative projects get set up. So they're the ones that, help them set up their organization structure, find land, actually build it, having architects, setting up profitable market gardens so that they have a business model, figuring out social governance, so many different things, like kind of across the board, all these projects that are trying to help projects. We weren't coordinating, and we all came together to say, let's build a new superstructure where we are coordinating to help each other. So we're in this process right now of creating a new organism, this alliance of organizations, and then we're going to select 12 projects, and we've had hundreds apply now, so it's going to be difficult actually. This is literally what we're doing next. So our next call, and you're welcome to join it actually, we're going to go through a process of trying to find the first 12 regenerative projects that we want to highlight. And right now, most of them are villages, so we think we're just going to do a village season and focus. So like, for example, there's a 200-acre property in Costa Rica, and they're building a whole bunch of different neighborhoods and with a different flavor of, so every neighborhood has a different flavor of what their neighborhood looks like. They're all regeneration based. There's permaculture everywhere. So you're just like walking through food forests to get to your neighbor's house. It's a beautiful picture of what a solar punk regen future could be. Similar one on like the island of the Azores in Portugal, kind of doing an eco retreat thing, and a bunch of beautiful, like, this is what we can do, let's coordinate to make it happen. And then open sourcing the whole process. So we have a DAO forum to come together, set up their circles and roles within the organization, which is also how we avoid the nuclear bomb of monetizing everything, is we do kind of the middle between subjective and objective. So what we found is we just do a role. So this role gets this form of compensation because this role is this level of complex. So it's a very simple framework we give organizations to try to figure out how to compensate people. Is this role, this level of complexity, here's your compensation for it, right? And then someone comes in and says, I can do that role, I want to do it. And we're like, great, we're going to let you try it out for 2 weeks or whatever. So they sign up for the role for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, they have to put up a new proposal saying, I want to be in again. And then again, the community is like, yep, we really valued you the last 2 weeks, you can come into it again.
Cool.
So now you have objective contribution. I am in this role, so we can issue them tokens, give them governance rights and all that stuff. But it's mixed with thoughtful, subjective governance that people can just signal, yes, we appreciate what they're bringing. So then we don't have to like nickel and dime every human activity. We just say, yes, we appreciate what's happening here. And in an economic lens, it actually flips everything on its head. So in capitalism, we have an incentive to make people sick. There's actually a report that came out by a medical industry being like, is it actually profitable to cure people?
Yeah.
Answer, no. It's like, what the fuck? You know, Chinese emperors figured this out forever ago. So what they did is they paid their doctors every day they were well. They said, every day when I'm healthy, you get paid. When I'm sick, you don't get paid. Perfect. Align incentives. Emperors lived forever, you know. So we can build that into our cities where you say, hey, you want to be a healer? Perfect. Just be a healer for our village. You're in that healer role. Now just go heal people. And if the village appreciates them healing them, great. And healers want this. Like, they don't want to go to someone being like, oh, you're sick, but can you pay me? You know, swipe here first because, you know, I've got to charge you. That's fucked up. Same thing with a lot of artists. Sorry for my language. It's just, there's so much sadness that I've felt from so many people who just, there's so many courses that's like how to change your relationship with money. And it's designed for artists to help them change how they feel about being nasty about selling their soul for money. You know, they just like, I have this gift, I want to give it. Money's weird. I don't like it. I don't understand it. And we're trying to force them into this, you know, capitalistic economic system. So that's what's also really interesting is we can build completely new types of economic systems that kind of look to the human needs first to say what really serves us. Let's build an economic system around that. Great. So anyway, that's kind of the slice where we're at right now.
It's a big slice, but I'd love to like watch the video you put together and let you know like thoughts or questions afterwards, and maybe we could circle back again and talk about it. I have a couple projects ongoing right now that you might be interested in. I'm not sure if there's like going to be like direct value right away, like direct overlap. But we're trying to put together or contribute to the creation of a sort of a governance metastructure to coordinate research and governance topics. And I'm trying to kick off study into like the creation of value systems for communities also, and trying to think of like really cool ways that you can actually create tools for crowdsourcing values and modeling value change over time. To like see when you have like community divergence from like a stated constitution. Like you say that like X, Y, and Z is like what you prefer. How do you know when the people who are participating and contributing no longer feel aligned with those statements? And how do you react to this?
Ooh, I love that. So this is where Filecoin comes in. So this is great.
Potentially, yeah.
The DAO we built is already integrated with Filecoin. And what we've been doing is we want to put a constitution on chain. And we've been working on this for a while so that you can come in and basically like Google Docs, like right click, say, make this change that goes up as a proposal. If the proposal passes, it changes. So the community can have this mutable record of what their current agreements are, and they can continually remake their constitution and have this objective truth of what they've agreed to on chain stored also in Filecoin.
Cool.
So I think that could be a really cool story for Filecoin being like building the foundation of future societies on top of a new internet, you know?
Yeah, no, this is the kind of stuff that is like super cool. We have like a whole nonprofit foundation specifically for social good and social impact type of projects. And they just hired several new staff, and I helped with their training, and the focus was on regenerative concepts because a lot of them come from sustainability backgrounds and environmental stewardship backgrounds too. So I think there is like a lot of potential overlap for this. And one of the benefits is, I mean, we all live in like a society, right? It's like the same thing with the artists. There's usually funding available to help projects like this too. So insofar as like the goal of the work is not all about just like linking things to money, there may be ways that we can also help support as an organization, like different things. Or you and I just in our own capacities, like link in on like projects of similar interest. But yeah, we should keep talking about this.
Well, Yes, and because what we're doing is we're modeling collaboration because we need to relearn that. So I'd say
Exactly, yeah.
you and I will come together, we'll learn how to collaborate. We're two ecosystems. Let's see how we can weave them together. That's just what I've been doing for the last like 5 years. Is this has been kind of my same fort. It's finding really awesome epic people doing epic things and being like, hey, come join us, other epic people. Let's weave everything together. And then after a while, it's just created this whole kind of, not me, I'm just saying my part that I've been playing in it is
Oh yeah, the network you're embedded in. Sure.
it's freaking epic. So yeah, I'd love to carry this
Amazing.
on. I'll send you that video and then we'll go from there and just grab another time to chat.
Cool. That sounds amazing. Thanks for making the time today, and super psyched to watch this video and dive in and continue to chat about this.
Beautiful. Talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.